In the 9 years since My Hero Academia first premiered, the franchise has certainly had its ups and downs. What started off as a series with a lot of goodwill, hype, and heart has ultimately, for a lot of people, devolved into repetition and mediocrity. It is easy to forget it was not always like this. The first 2.5 seasons especially genuinely were very well regarded. And it's after that point that the show largely decided, hey, we're going to keep doing these training arcs and tests and work exposures again and again and again on repeat without really doing anything super interesting, without the characters really growing all that much, and without an intriguing plotline there to carry things through. It's only recently, as the show has gotten more serious and more focused on its endgame, that opinions on it have started to pick back up, but even then, they certainly have not reached the highs that this show was seeing in terms of its reception when it first started. Which means that when its spin-off series, My Hero Academia Vigilantes, was first announced, I know a lot of other people, largely were not particularly interested. If the main series has lost so many people's interest, what hope could there really be for a spin-off? Wouldn't we all kind of expect it to be more of the same repetitive, for lack of a better word, slop that the main show was churning out season after season? Thankfully, that preconception was incorrect. This spin-off series genuinely surprised me because it reminded me of what I liked, what I was drawn to from this franchise, from this universe, when the first season of My Hero Academia started 9 years ago. This show has the heart, the passion, the likable characters that all were assets to My Hero Academia initially, that largely were drained out of the main show over time, little by little. Part of the reason why this spinoff ended up turning out so well is because it had a much narrower focus. Because it's dealing with a much smaller primary cast, our focus is on 3 primary characters with a number of supporting characters recurring here and there, without delving too much into legacy characters from My Hero Academia. Yes, there are a few. Aizawa is probably the most prominent of them, but we aren't constantly bombarded with references and cameos to characters from the main show. The fact that it's set some number of years prior to the main show starting certainly helps, because most of the Class 1A characters are going to be little kids at this point, so there's not really a reason to show them off. In addition to the cast being more narrow, the focus of the show, the setting, is a lot narrower as well, because it's just dealing with this one specific location in Japan, with these characters taking it upon themselves to actually deal with these generally smaller crimes, at least on the surface, that more prominent heroes are going to take a lot longer to get around to. It shows why there is a need for these vigilantes, these people who are not registered heroes, to actually exist, because they can respond to these crimes a lot more quickly, because they're actually out there patrolling this much smaller area. They're dealing with local threats because they themselves are living in this area. They are locals to some extent. It shows why a need for these characters would exist, and it does critique the system that exists in this universe, that these big-time heroes are not always going to have time for these smaller crimes, and even if they do, a lot of damage might be done before they get around to it. And of course, because the main trio are not professional heroes, one of them, Knuckle Duster, doesn't even have any powers, there are threats that they can't necessarily deal with. You know, a guy who is really strong, someone who can slide around and doesn't fully understand how useful his quirk can be in the case of Koichi, and someone who can float around in the case of Popstep, are not going to be able to handle all of these villains and crimes, especially as they start to escalate over the course of the series once the main plotline starts to kick off, and we start to learn what exactly is going on with Trigger. But the characters do come to realize that even if they can't directly stop this problem, they can become aware of it quicker than the professional heroes and contact some of those heroes that they get involved and can deal with the threats that are too big for them. It shows a growth in understanding as far as what these characters are able to achieve, even as they do train and get stronger and start to learn about different ways that they can utilize their powers that they may not have thought of initially. So I think the show does a good job of giving a good reason why vigilantes of this sort would exist in a world like this, why they would be appreciated by the public, why there would be a void for them to fill that the professional heroes simply are not capable of doing. but it also shows that there are limits to what these characters are capable of doing, that not only do they still have a ways to go in order to become stronger, but that there are simply going to be certain things that they are not equipped to handle that they need to call in professionals for. Now, I do think the show could stand to tackle more of the differences between vigilantes and heroes. There are some elements of that. We do get some backstory for someone like Stain, for example, from season 2 of My Hero Academia. We see how someone could start off as a vigilante and maybe want to do some good and ultimately get twisted and become more and more morally depraved as time goes on. So there is an element of, hey, maybe being a vigilante isn't always great. Maybe some of these people are dangerous. Maybe there's a reason why they aren't heroes, because they aren't quite where they need to be morally in order to take on that responsibility and actually be a good person. But I do think the show could probably stand to do more of that. And I hope it does focus on that more, given that we already have a second season on the way. And by my understanding, this show could probably go for like 4 seasons in total based on the source material. I would like to think that it will get some more focus as time goes on. But I am, for the time being, satisfied with what we get here, that the show does at least address it, even if it isn't the main focus throughout the entire run. The characters themselves, on a personal level, I do think are really fun, and they do have that heart that I think the characters in My Hero Academia proper had initially and ultimately kind of faded away as time went on. I think Koichi is likable from the get-go. It's hard not to appreciate his eagerness to help out and just do the right thing, even if it's in small ways. But he also feels, I think, more relatable to a lot of people than someone like Deku might have. Even though I still do like Deku as a main character in My Hero Academia, I know there are a good chunk of viewers who find him annoying, don't particularly like his character growth, and find him a little bit too unrelatable. I think Koichi will appeal to more people than Deku ultimately did. Popstep is probably the character that would be the most divisive amongst people, simply because she is very much so a kind of tsundere character, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if you like tsunderes, you will appreciate her. I think she is a fun character and generally pretty likable, but she will probably get on the nerves of more than one person who simply find her kind of annoying, and that's fine. I think she has a charm to her that makes her fun to watch. I like that the show has the time to let her try to explore being an idol and improve at being an idol. I think that's fun. I think it adds to the heart of the series, but I could definitely see people finding her and the focus on that stuff being distracting and annoying at the same time. It's not how I feel, but it is a perspective I could see people having. And then you have Knuckle Duster, who is just kind of a badass. I mean, he's a guy with no powers who's beating the crap out of people, all for a very understandable purpose. It's not something that you know initially, but as the show goes on and you learn why he's doing what he's doing, what exactly happened to him to make him pursue all these people who are using Trigger, I mean, you can't help but feel for the guy. He is handled exceptionally well, and I'm really curious to see what happens with him and his story arc over the course of however many seasons we get. Definitely, I think the standout character of the trio. Knuckle Duster will probably be most people's favorites, not just because he's a badass, but because he has the backstory and he has the determination and the personal goals to actually back that up. So while the focus is definitely smaller and not as grand as that of My Hero Academia proper, I think it is to this spin-off's benefit. I was very pleasantly surprised at how much I ended up liking these characters and liking this smaller setting compared to the main series. And sure, this is only one season of 13 episodes. We don't know what the remaining seasons will end up doing, but so far I don't see the bloat. I don't see the repetitiveness that has been absolutely plaguing the main My Hero Academia series. And I'm not sure this show will go on long enough for that rot to set in. If this show continues to only do 13 episodes per season and we only get like 4 seasons, I don't think there's enough time for it to be like that. And I think unlike the main My Hero Academia show, when this spin-off focuses on things not related to the plot, when it focuses on characters like Popstep trying to be an idol and perform at this local department store, it doesn't feel like we're being repetitive. It's not doing the same exams and work studies and whatever again and again and again, to the point where it became so boring and unwatchable in the main show. These character moments, these things that I'm sure people will say are filler moments, even though that's not what filler is, they actually add to the characters. They give them more depth. They make them more likable. I want to watch these scenes, whereas I don't care about seeing Bakugo in the main show fail a test and then have to retake it. I don't care about these characters doing the same things again and again and again that don't really add to their depth and don't make them more interesting. This show, so far, does not show those signs. It does not make me fear what is going to come next from however many seasons we get. And considering that I had such low expectations for this show going into it, it really turned this into a very pleasant surprise. This spinoff has no business being as good so far as it is, and if it continues to be this good and build on its characters and its overall plot line while still giving you those character moments to make them be more memorable and more interesting than a lot of the primary characters in the main show, then this has the potential to genuinely be a much better show than the main series. Because if it can avoid the pitfalls that My Hero Academia has fallen into and has never quite been able to get back out of, and it continues to remind me and others of the feelings that they felt when the first season of My Hero Academia started, when that passion and that heart was still very much so a primary part of that viewing experience, then I see no reason why this can't be comparable to those early seasons and why it can't potentially even exceed them. So let me know what you think of this spinoff down in the comments below. I'm very curious to see how many other people were surprised by how much they enjoyed this spinoff, and if you also think this could have the potential to be better than actual My Hero Academia in the long run. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and until next time, take care everyone. Look forward to the next video.